Perfect. Okay, it looks like we're live on Facebook and recording now, so welcome everybody. We have a small group for this one, possibly because the pricing of the lineup, but it's priced like this because there's some expensive whiskey in it. But welcome for our Ben Nevis tasting. Really cool lineup, including multiple 1996s that seem to be sort of a classic year for Ben Nevis in this lineup. But yeah, I think we might as well just dive in if everybody's ready to go. Hopefully you guys saw the tasting order in the invite that I sent out. So we're starting with the Maltbarn Ben Nevis 96, going on to the Whiskey Sponge 96, then on to one of the younger ones with the Equinox and Solstice Ben Nevis 7-year-old. After that, for number 4, it'll be the Boutique Ben Nevis 25-year-old. And the Whiskybase 96 for number 5, and then going young again and big sherry for the last 2 with the NAS number 2 Ben Nevis 7-year-old and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society Las Bodegas de Fort William that we had in an out turn just back in June, I think.
Yeah.
Sold out, but I'm looking forward to revisiting that one. So let's jump right in with whiskey number 1, which is the Maltbarn.
I'm happy that along with you, Tom, that the order was put in the link notes. I like that we're doing that more often, especially with these older ones. Some time in the glass, a little agitation really helps them showcase. The first time I noticed them, they were all big, punches in the face. They're smelling much better now.
The only problem I find is when we pick them in advance is that we're much more susceptible to along the way and choosing the order of the lineup because we haven't tasted them largely ourselves at that point, or if we have, we haven't given a ton of time. Fortunately, there's a couple of brave souls. Usually it's Evan, who's our hero, who cements an order for us ahead of time. So not all heroes in caves, right? Can we address the elephant in the room? Because we're going to do 4 of these guys tonight, which was similar to what I did with my club not long ago. I eavesdropped on you guys just a little bit while I was plugging in lights and doing all that stuff to get set up here. You guys were talking about vintages and the 96. We're going to talk about 96 probably a few times tonight. I think probably a couple of these names are ridiculous, familiar enough to have sat in with and talking about these great vintage releases. So yes, 1996 is very, very, very special for vintage for Ben Nevis, and that's why we're doing a few of them here.
Yeah, Evan was saying we did a single malts of Scotland 1996 release along with an Imperial and a Clynelish kind of all at once, and the Ben Nevis was kind of the silent sleeper of the batch at the time, but still really well received, and I'm sad I don't have one.
Yeah, that single cask I keep on thinking about as time goes on, and I wish I had bought one because we ended up having minis in our whiskey calendar as well, and I never got a mini of it either, except for the one that I wrote the tasting notes with, which is long gone. But that Ben Nevis single cask was so sherried and so fantastic, and just had this unique tanginess to it that I'm kind of curious to see if we see anything in the lineup like it in this one. The Maltbarn that we're starting with does have a lot of sort of the underlying spirit notes that I remember getting from the single malts of Scotland, where the SMWS bottling had this sort of like layer of sherry, and then you had to dive into it to actually get into the tropical fruit notes and the tanginess that you're getting in this one as well. But this is all ex-bourbon from what I recall, and it's got these gorgeous like Jolly Rancher-esque candied fruit notes to them right on the nose.
Absolutely. Actually, it comes through later on some of the younger notes, those Jolly Rancher candy notes. There's also like this kind of nice mineral chalkiness on the nose of this as well, which is kind of nice. There's still that kind of furniture polish, waxiness that comes through that I find is quite signature to Ben Nevis, but it's really nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy that this is we selected this as a starter. I kind of put the lineup as I thought it should be together, even though I've only tasted one of these before that I can recall with the society bottle. And then had Sean kind of tweak it because he had tasted a few more of them. And I think I had the Maltbarn in, but he did switch the next one around to put the whiskey sponge next for me. And then ended up telling me to put the society bottle at the end instead of having it second last.
Absolutely, it should be at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Before I knew you put the lineup together, I had selected a lineup quite similar, but I had it at the end just because it's a beast.
Yeah. So it is interesting that we have I think it is 4 96s in here with the, I think the boutique is a 96 as well,
It
if I remember
is,
correctly.
yeah.
And Harmony and I were talking about how certain distilleries, they're like people that really geek out on certain distilleries always talk about certain vintages just being some of the best ever that they put out. 96 is definitely sort of in the running for that for Ben Nevis. And it didn't even occur to me until I'd heard a few other people talking about it, and then went back and looked to see our society or our single malt of Scotland bottling was a 96 as well. But it's cool how that happens. And what must have happened with Ben Nevis is that it might be just because it's a vintage we can recognize as being prime, partially because it is really good, but also partially because my guess is that the distillery had sold off more of their spirit that year, or more of their spirit has been stuck around in cask that they've sold off in time, because there is some 97 Ben Nevis out there. I can't remember if I've seen any 98s or 99s specifically. Maybe that stuff is still to be bottled. I don't know. But I think what happens is because Ben Nevis, we don't see a whole lot of, we don't see any official bottlings of on this side of the pond. But they do sell or have sold in the past a decent amount of whiskey, probably in parcels or lots where there's more than one cask, pardon me, going out at a time, and then it gets split up between brokers and independent bottlers along the way, that just some whiskey kind of squeaked out, and we've been able to find out it is really good because of that.
Yeah, I was curious. I personally don't find Ben Nevis to have a rich and complex history. They've bought and sold back to the family, and then sold again to Nika. Nika used to obtain 75% of their new make to go into their Nika Black label, and when it was still allowed to be called Japanese whiskey. Now I don't believe that whiskey even exists, but I was curious to know, that's it's down the line from when they acquired the distillery, if there was some sort of change within the ownership saying like, oh, maybe we don't need to ship so much to Japan, and so they started letting go of some of the spirit that they had in 96, which just allowed for kind of this renaissance of Ben Nevis globally.
Yeah, it could be something like that, or it could just be that was a year where they needed the money as well.
Yeah, well, and that's just, okay, we're not selling as much, but sell it to other people.
Because that also for Nika, are you saying Nika owned it during 96? So
Yes, they have.
So that would have been in an era for Nika where Japanese whiskey wasn't exactly flying off the shelves in Japan. The Japanese whiskey boom didn't start till probably the early 2000s over there, and then around the world around the same time as well. But that would have been an era where a lot of distilleries in Japan had closed or already been closed, and maybe Nika wasn't doing so great at the time either. If I remember correctly, the Japanese economy, boy, this is going way back. This is high school era, but I don't think Japan economically was doing great around that time, from between like 95 and 98 either. Well, if you guys, while we're chatting with this, let's try the Whiskey Sponge Ben Nevis 96, which is number 2, because it is vastly different on the nose, and the Whiskey Sponge himself actually talks about
We
this
didn't
being
talk about,
a very distillate-driven style.
sorry, we didn't talk about the palate on the Ben Nevis, but man, it's very like burst of fruits and
Yeah,
like
juicy.
grapefruit for me, and like pineapples and peaches that I wasn't exactly expecting.
The
Yeah,
palate,
that
proper Ben Nevis. That's what I expect when they drink Ben Nevis. It's got that tropical thing going on, but it's all of the like way more sour ends of the tropical spectrum, like the way deep, almost bitter sour kind of notes, which I love. I covet those like immensely. And then there's still that really deep, rich oiliness, and there's something like strawberry sunripe bars or something there. It's got that really intense leathery kind of fruitiness going on there.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that you said that sour note, because for me, and I hope it changes and I can appreciate it, that sour note with some sherry maturation doesn't always jive with my palate, and it kind of goes into that like balsamic-y style, which I have to be in the right mood for.
Yeah. Well, that was our Ben Nevis, the single malts of Scotland one in spades. Like it went sour and nearly bitter leathery on the finish, but in a really good way, in my opinion.
All right. So let's jump into the Whiskey Sponge.
Yeah. This is and you talked about this before again, Harmony, that like it's so like bouillon-esque, and like you're caramelizing onions.
I'm caramelizing onions, but I'm also, instead of putting like my pencil in the pencil sharpener, I put my eraser in backwards and I'm like grinding it with a crank.
Yeah. This is maybe Kurt will agree with me or disagree with on this, but the nose is almost Lechegian. Like it has that sort of like rubbery tire fire note.
Yeah, it does. It's like a little bit of like, it's like a dude who's been raiding the garden for chives and sweating them out the day after kind of thing. It's kind of stinky. It's kind of funky. It's kind of burnt, rubbery, kind of Lechegian, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thing that's just like kind of dirty about it. But
yeah,
as well, actually, there's like kind of a you know, when potatoes have gone too long in the pantry kind of thing. There's a note of that there too.
Right.
I think it's kind of cool. I think it gets a little too close to Lecheg, a little too close to Ben Nevis in some of those really burlappy expressions.
Yeah, Ben Nevis for sure.
Just okay.
Yeah.
I think the palate is a lot more straightforward than the nose is, where it goes really sort of like into those funky notes. Maybe this was like one of those weekend distillations where it's like, yeah, we start, or fermentations where they started the fermentation on the Thursday and then they just left it till Monday kind of thing.
Yeah. Went a little long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was doing some reading and they talked about, and maybe you guys can explain the difference to me, that Ben Nevis is one of the remaining distilleries that uses brewer's yeast, and that it does put in kind of that sour note to it. Like why do that? Is that just their signature, just to be different, or is there a profile that fits within this that we should be searching for?
I don't have enough knowledge in chemistry. I think it's,
we need a Sean.
yeah, I think it's Rory's sister Bryony that works for Artbag. I think she's done her chemistry in yeast. I think it's her. Yeast to me is crazy cool, crazy geeky. I just don't know enough about the decisions that are made by the companies as to which ones they use. Every tour I've ever been on and asked what they use, they're happy to tell you and everything. And they're usually like, oh yeah, it's a combination of this and this gets started quicker, this goes longer kind of thing. But they don't speak to necessarily the flavors they're chasing or anything. I think it's kind of cool that brewer's yeast, I think, is probably the backbone of Yukon stuff going on up there, since they are. I kind of get that in a few of the Canadian single malts, and I don't know if that's the case, but in things like the Ben Nevis and stuff, it seems to work for me in a lot of ways. And a lot of the Canadian ones, it doesn't seem to work for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a case of how deep they've been able to go years with things like Ben Nevis and stuff. But maybe these Canadian ones, when they hit that age, all of those slightly artificial fruit, banana tones and everything, they may absolutely deep dive into those overripe tropicals too. Who knows? Could be fun. I think brewers
Yeah.
is really, really curious though. I'm with you on Harmony. I'm kind of like, okay, I want to know more about why the brewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to two brewers right away when you were talking about that, and a lot of the American single malts and stuff use brewers yeast as well, from what I recall. But I am curious to see whether it does delve on the two brewer side into more of those tropical notes, because it is just like bananas all over the place. From their younger spirit to what we have today, even, which is some of it would be in the 12-year-old range, 13-year-old range at this point. But maybe it is like Mortlock, where it just hits a switch at some point and it goes from like being like rubbery and funky into something like utterly fantastic. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, think we've got enough here. We could make our own assumptions on it. But no, that one's really different. It is very, very spirit forward. I can appreciate kind of the caution in the whiskey sponge notes of like, this is a spirit driven product.
Yep.
Yeah. It's very strong for me. I feel like it will definitely need time in a glass or water, but it hits me like right in my head with that alcohol note. And it's like, it's not a headache, but it's not a headache.
I think it's like total wheelhouse for sponge to release something like that, because it is a geek level where you can really, really see a lot of base spirit there. But I also think it's kind of like best analogy in its own way. It's sort of like a sulfur whiskey in that I think this went into a pretty shitty cask. I think that's why it's as weird as it is and stuff. I don't think we're seeing the best of the spirit, and that's not because the spirit isn't good. I think it was actually kind of a funky cask. It works as a science experiment. I would happily drink the bottle of it, but it would take me a while, and it wouldn't be one I would always be reaching. It's an alcohol with Ben Nevis for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a pondering whiskey, like where you have to take your time with it. It's not something that you pound back because you're just like you cannot not drink it. This is it's this one. I do need to take my time with it and kind of like delve into it a bit more and try and figure out what's going on, because it isn't all the like it's not the everything on the nose and palate just screams delicious type of whiskey. It does have those weird notes to it, but it is it's one of those like idiosyncratic whiskeys where it's almost like watching a train wreck, where it's just like you can't look away.
It's the kind of whiskey where you want to bring a friend into that train wreck too.
That's right. Because it like nose wise it is so oniony, like and you can see how it's like trying to get to those fruit notes and it just doesn't make it in most places. It's super starchy as well, as Kurt was saying with the potatoes. The palate I think is a lot more palatable than the nose is. Although it is still a little bit funky, you do get a little bit more of that fruit note coming off, and then it's got these underlying notes of like marshmallows and s'mores, where it's like graham crackers and a bit of chocolate.
And
you really got to tease them out.
Something we didn't mention before that hit us upon that first nose was how honeyed it is around all of it. It's like honeyed chives, honeyed onions, and it's so sickly sweet that it's sharp and it shouldn't be there.
We had talked about that, and that honey note was jumped out at to me even before the onions. It's kind of blown off a bit, but it was just honey all over the place, and it was like too much honey in a bad way kind of thing at the beginning.
It's still there though. But it's very, very interesting. Onions.
So for this lineup, the way it ended up is we kind of have these little breaks in it where we're going into something younger and sherried now before we're doing two more 96s. So the first of the younger ones is the Equinox and Solstice Ben Nevis 2014 7-year-old. It's been cut down to 48.5% alcohol, And the cool thing about this lineup too is that we'll be essentially revisiting this whiskey, but at a higher proof later on. So this is, I think this was it a sherry butt or a marriage of sherry butts? I can't recall.
Butts plural.
Yeah. Butts.
We're all adults here. We can say asses if we want.
Yeah, that's right. No.
We have two Sammys on this tasting, and every time I look at Sammy Samhuri's picture, I think he's like just giving me this great big beaming smile.
So happy to be here and see you. I know it is such a great photo, actually.
So the Equinox right now on the nose does have some through notes with the last one, where it does have that weird type of sharpness to it. It does have a bit of like chives and onions.
Yeah, but it's more it's the fruit seems to be
Coming out
bigger.
more. Yeah.
Darker fruit. It still feels like really oily and fatty.
Yeah, definitely sherry driven on this one, where the distillate's there, but the sherry is definitely asserting its presence.
It's either like seasoned sherry, relatively new seasoned sherry style, or it's like a really tired ex-Glenfarclas cask.
Yeah.
I see more
minerality again
between this and the first one than I do this and the second one, actually. I
Yeah.
think it's not seeing the flaws that I saw in the second one. I'm seeing more just of a less developed whiskey.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. The minerality for me is what hits me for the kind of like the through note for all three right now, where this one has that slight bit of chalkiness. Going back and nosing number one, I can see where this is just like it's younger, but it's on the way to those notes that the Maltbarn has.
Yeah, it on the palate, it's got a great, nice big mouthfeel for something that's 7 years old or however old it is, 7. Waxy, I get like Sharpie notes or like some sort of chemical oils, very peppery. And then those like dark fruits. But it's like a nice balance of like sweet and dry.
Yeah, I agree. Where it's not like overly cloying, but it's also not like the super dry, like where I'm licking my teeth afterwards.
Yeah.
It's almost like you stirred in a couple of drops of hoisin into plum sauce.
Oh yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah. When I was nosing all of these at work, I said I might have to like go buy a plate of sushi or something and have it with these whiskeys, because I do find a signature hoisin and soy sauce note that kind of comes through. It'll especially show in the next 3, I think, more so, but it's really cool. It feels like a food whiskey.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting too, because the tropical plus the soy sauce and the hoisin sauce, that's something, those are like a trio of notes that I always sort of combine and put together for Glen Scotia. Especially when Glen Scotia gets some age and hits sherry, where it goes into those soy sauce notes a lot of the time for me.
Yeah. No, I like this. This is different.
So I can't lie, I've had the sister to this that we're going to have shortly, and I absolutely adored it. And I had to send off some tasty notes to a good colleague of ours yesterday for this one. I was looking forward to trying this one probably more than any of the others in the line. Maybe excepting the Whiskybase one, Whiskybase 26-year-old or 96, I think it's 26-year-old. But that one largely just because of the label. This one was true geeky curiosity, where I was like, I had it up to 10, let's turn it back down to 7 and see how it is. It's good young whiskey, man. That's a good young cask. Casks.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see why there's definitely some independent bottlers that have been releasing some young, aggressive, high ABV Ben Nevis, often in sherry casks, or at least finished in sherry casks, where they're they're hyper young, hyper high ABV, and hyper dark when they come in the bottle.
Yeah,
It's an enticing combination.
I have an old like Carnmore that I bought years ago. It was like a 5-year, and it's dark, thick and dark as Coke, and it was just a huge sherry bomb that was very much like this. Yeah,
It's interesting because I tend to like young whiskey, like maybe more than other people, like Kurt and Andrew at Kensington Wine Market. Kurt, cut me off if I'm talking shit at you, but I do tend to be more forgiving for younger whiskey, but hearing 5-year-old and Ben Nevis now makes me think that it was like cut down before its prime in some ways.
yeah.
I
Well,
think there's
I'll
a
open it
lot of
and we'll
exciting
see.
young. Sorry, Harmony, go ahead.
No, I just said, well, one day I'll open it and we'll find out.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a ton of exciting young distilleries out there that I like.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'd rather drink 3, 4, and 5-year-old whiskey from some of the new ones that are really, really laser focused on kind of like geek level production and a real eye to like, this is textured whiskey, it's unchill filtered, it's natural, it's rich, we're vatting well, we're casking well, we're doing all these kind of things.
Yeah.
We're seeing some fantastic young whiskeys. I think they're way more exciting than a lot of the 40% 12-year-olds on the market, if I'm being honest. So I'm going to reach for those more often. But generally, yes, the whiskeys are more exciting. But you get something like this, like that, the one we're going to come to towards the back end here. We used it in the lineup quite similar in my club, and it was one of the absolute favorites of the night. So young whiskey is not, it should never be a gate that we're afraid to kick open kind of thing. It should just be something we're kind of leery of when pricing is wrong. But just otherwise, man, think of how young whiskey used to be. Like when it was first served up, it was raw and rough and tumble and stuff. Some of the all-time greatest whiskeys, highest marks by some of the most respected reviewers are like 5-year-old Glen Grants, 7-year-old or 8-year-old Glen Grants, like crazy stuff like that, right? 12-year-old Kleinbush that's absolutely legendary, 8-year-old Lagavulin and stuff like that.
Yeah, it just has to be in the bottle for 40 plus years before you crack it, and bottled at 38%, and then it's okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
No,
well, let's go on to the boutique. This was one that I've definitely been curious about because I've been seeing the bottle around. So this is 96 again, 25-year-old, 55.8% alcohol for their unbottled for Boutique's 10th anniversary.
Yeah, and a label from Boutique that I can actually understand.
It's just a glove. It's one glove. It's the Michael
a
Jackson
man
reference.
holding a glass, and in the glass it's a reflection of the Fort Williams Mountain or the Ben Nevis Mountain. And it's like, I know what that means. Do you know if this was in the anniversary tasting?
I think it was, and unfortunately, I've missed just about every single boutique tasting there's been, where I always end up closing that night. But
there's a lot of similarities here.
This is right next to that whiskey sponge one again, where it's going into the this is full on Ichiban packet right on the nose for me right now.
Yeah, it's like a beef bouillon packet that you open and you haven't added water yet.
Yeah, I was trying to decide between whether it was the chicken or the beef. I just can't tell if it's the yellow food coloring in there or the brown food coloring.
It's brown, and I only say that because I was squishing brown bouillon cubes yesterday.
It's a little bit composty and garbagey on the nose too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going in that
definitely
side.
I think it's leaning more into dunnage than Lecheg for me right now.
Yeah, this one doesn't have that Lechegian quality that
This is like
sounds like insidious and dark. That sounds almost Lovecraftian.
I know.
Oh, it's Lechegian. Ooh.
They actually one Lechegian invaded the Lilliputians and just like put his foot down, and that was it. That was genocide right there.
Yeah, you get like, again, this is like Sunday morning, polishing your shoes, I think I said it earlier today, so maybe it's just on my mind, but it's like a sour crabapple bitter note on the nose.
I think you could even go one further and go sauerkraut or sour cabbage on there on the nose right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Two things that I'm not a huge fan of, but I don't mind nosing it on my whiskey, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's very funky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
This is
particularly like the nose, but I actually really do like the palate.
Yeah.
That's a big disconnect there. The palate is really good.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that palate's so different.
It's still a little composty at the back end of it, but there's a lot of bigger fruit tones.
There's a lot of big fruit.
Mm-hmm.
That balsamic note is still here.
Yeah.
Even in the palate.
This is the churchgoer that just spent 6 days sinning, and now is going to go and kneel down on the pew kind of thing and be forgiven. It's like sulfury, and he made his own private hell along the way, and that now it's all just going to be absolved.
This is hitting a little close to home. I'm feeling kind of attacked, but at the same time, I'm kind of feeling heard right now.
You're feeling attacked, but you're really glad that that pew's there to kneel down on.
That's right.
Oh, again, more of
Yeah.
that like, big pepper note. Oh, that I really like this.
There is almost a disconnect between the nose and palate, where it does go very near to the whiskey sponge nose wise, and then goes even more chocolatey than the Equinox and Solstice one did for me for the past one, where it's into like chocolate and Ovaltine notes right now with those really big malt notes on the palate.
Speaking of Ovaltine, this odd segue where I'm going to put on my company hat for just a sec as a plug, but that's not why I'm saying it. I cannot hear Ovaltine without thinking of A Christmas Story with the little Orphan Annie decoder ring that gives them the message, be sure to drink your Ovaltine. On that note, it just made me think our advent calendar, you guys see the back of it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whiskey calendar, I didn't say the A word.
Yeah.
Which is so
I
funny.
think we can say it now.
I think we can, because I've seen quite a few items come about lately that have those words on it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of just mashes up number 3 or 2 and number 3 together for me. Number 4.
When it's good, I think it's like you've taken a good kind of fruity fudge kind of almost, and stirred in some kind of sour tropical fruits, some sort of thick oils, and then just every now and then you get a whiff of something that's almost smoke but isn't really smoke.
Yeah.
It's a really strange combination that defines the Ben Nevis profile for me, but it's like there's nothing like it when you get it firing on all cylinders. Like they're super singular.
Yeah, it's interesting to say smoke, because even on the finish on this one, it's got that, like, it goes from bitter to almost acrid on the palate, just like kind of chewing it at the end, where it does just seem to have that, like, is it fainty, is it barrel, is it actually a bit of peat in there, but probably more barrel than anything else combined with the spirit, but it's a cool little tweak to everything.
God, I nose ahead to the next one and then I come back to this, and it's all sort of like soupy and celery salt.
If you smell
Oh yeah,
the whiskey base, it smells like celery salt, or smelling it and then going back.
Smelling the whiskey based one, like just nosing ahead, and then coming back to the boutique one, it's all celery salt, some dried coriander, kind of almost into cumins and stuff. Really soupy.
Interesting, because when I do that, it reminds me of 2 more.
Yeah, going from the whiskey based one to the Millstone one, going back to my 7th day guy getting absolved there. This is it. You know, is the one, and that's him on the Sunday after church, and then you go back to the boutique one, and it's him on the Saturday night.
Ah,
Yeah,
absolve him.
yeah,
Speaking of Jaeger bombs and cheap busts, never mind.
yeah. Well, let's go to the whiskey based one because that nose is super enticing right now. That is kind of what I was talking about with our single malts of Scotland. It's not quite as balsamic driven, but it is that the sherry is there and it's leathery and a bit tobacco-y, but it's so tropical underneath there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't even have to taste this to tell you I like it.
Yeah.
That's right in my wheelhouse.
And there is just a touch along with that tropical note of that, like you're right at the mash tun and the yeast is just starting to do its thing.
It's a little
Like
bit
it's
beery.
got that. Yeah.
It's a little bit what, Kurt?
Beery, or like I remember when my parents used to make fresh bread or buns.
Yeah.
And when it starts to like
Yeast is rising.
yeah, and you get that kind
Yeah.
of boozy smell and stuff. Fruity and
Yeah.
boozy at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, just very yeasty. And it's
Right.
certain distilleries get it a lot for me. Young Linkwood, like in the like 8 to 12 and 13-year range, especially in ex-bourbon, has that big yeasty side of it to it. And I'm getting some of that on this one, even at 26 years old, which is crazy.
Fantastic palate.
I love the like sour pineapple
Mm-hmm.
note that comes through here.
It's got its claws in on the tongue, like it's a little bit grippy, a little bit drying, a little bit kind of slightly suede-ish or something, like you put this in your tongue. But all of the really, really cool fruit notes are there. Some grapefruit pith drying everything out too. I love that palate. Really love it. I like that the nose and the palate have a nice balance too. The nose is a little bit more exciting to me. Both are really, really good.
You guys ever got the what's the name of the fruit flower basket arrangement thing where they dip the flower or the
Edible
fruit in chocolate?
arrangements.
Yeah. So it's like you've got the chocolate dip pineapple, or you've got pineapple that you've just dipped into a chocolate fountain on the palate for me.
Yeah, no, I don't give fruit baskets. Those are like breakup gifts. You give that to someone you're dumping,
Really?
whether it's like a boss
Boy.
or your dentist or an ex.
That's a really random thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's a fruit basket. By the way, we're done.
Yeah.
Harmony, my wife just gave me a fruit basket.
Oh.
What does it mean?
You're gonna make sure the suitcases are still in the garage.
That's right. Yeah, I gotta shut this tasting down a little bit early, guys. I'm sorry. I gotta check on something.
Yeah. No, I just imagine if you're giving a fruit basket to somebody that you're not really friends on.
Yeah.
So that YouTube video, right? That guy that is breaking up with his wife while he's doing the Lefroy 10 review.
Oh man, that is amazing.
I have not seen this.
Oh, it's crazy. It's like just total lo-fi, just this guy sitting there at his computer, talking whiskey kind of thing, obviously vlogging. And he's, he says her name. He's like, yeah, she's just left me. And she's in the background saying something to him. He's like, yeah, bye kind of thing. And she just walks out the door behind him.
Yeah, like she's packing up in the background.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Oh my gosh.
So it's crazy. But I sat next to that guy at the Victoria Whiskey Festival in the Gordon MacPhail event. I had no idea. And afterwards, I was talking to Doug and a couple of the other guys, and they're like, who you were just sitting with, right? It's like, no, I think it was Jeff Sergent that told me. He's like, that was this guy. I'm like, are you kidding? I need that guy to sit at my forehead or something.
Yeah,
no kidding.
And
so how's the love like, buddy? Yeah.
Brad and Sammy in the chats are like, yeah, he's from Victoria. He's at the Whiskey Fest all the time.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Oh, he's such a
I hope life's done well for him since.
I hope so too. He became like a celebrity for that in the whiskey world.
Oh, well, at least he had some.
It's an amazing single malt tasting where you're on a webcam and your wife's leaving in your background because you can just use your tears as the water.
It was all his decision and it was the best thing for him. I don't know the story. Like you said, I wish the guy well. He was really nice and friendly to sit next to and chat with. That's all I know, but it was crazy cool to sit next to him. This is a good whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
It
No,
is.
I think this is, it's my favorite in the lineup, so far.
Yeah, it's Kurt, you're gonna have to share your bottle with everyone because this one's sold out.
Oh,
This, the malt barn's close on it because I do tend to like more ex bourbon, but this is really good stuff.
you're talking the whiskey base one still, Harmony?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a bottle of this,
Really?
really. But Christmas is coming up, so if you're looking for ideas,
Yeah, one of the
I'm
six
still
of you
trying to
that I
find
was
you
able
that
to
bag
purchase
of
one. Yeah.
money that you've been asking for.
for years.
Okay, well let's go a little bit younger and go to the NES #2 Ben Nevis 7-year-old, which is essentially the same as the Equinox and Solstice. It's just not cut down as much. This is cut down to 100 British proof, and that's it.
Yeah, so these are sister casks, which is kind of very exciting. We have 4 from the same vintage year and then 2 sister casks at different ABVs. So
I could be wrong, but I don't think this is even a sister cast. This is like the exact same parcel.
I think I think it's the same.
Yeah.
Split
fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm starting to get stuffy. You may lose me before we finish here. Things are closing up on me.
Well, I gotta say the nose is actually tighter versus the Equinox.
This just screams first edition sherry to me. Like, you know, all those ones we've got in right now, the Craig and Mark, Craig Alecky, Tamdu, all those ones, those Mortlacks we've had, the really big style sherry. This, I would think blindly was one of those.
That's a really
It does
good.
even have like a little touch of pine sap in there right now on the
Mhm.
nose with all the wood notes.
It's goopy.
If you go back and nose the Equinox, it's like it's peated. Like there's this old school smokiness that reminds me of old school G&M casks of Lakewood, where they were still direct firing the stills and stuff.
So 7-year-old whiskey, in my opinion, has no business being this good.
Yep.
No, I mean that in all sincerity, not just trying to.
No,
Like,
it just goes back to what we were saying earlier about how there's something special about young whiskey.
Yeah.
I think the key to having this kind of complexity is generally oxidation. You need enough time in barrel. It's not that you need a ton of wood influence, but time in barrel. I think this one says it was in a really loud cask and probably shouldn't have gone any further, but it also has complexity beyond its years. This is a weird whiskey for me, and I love it.
Yeah, it kind of touches on what we see a lot of young distilleries, not as much in Scotland, but especially in North America, trying to do, where just about everything is in first fill X, because you need to have a very aggressive cask to be able to release something young that actually has character and flavor to it. Otherwise, you just get this super hot and harsh spirit. So you put it in like this super aggressive, sometimes virgin oak casks, even with Canadian whiskeys, which I think you were saying the other day, Kurt, with a Wildlife distillery release, where it's this weird kind of like balance on the knife point, where you try and have this like really accessible, usually super creamy new make, and then you put it in this hyper aggressive cask and you hope that you get it out of there in time to actually have something that's palatable. Because if you don't pull it out in time, it's going to just go over the tipping point.
Yeah, I wish more producers, I guess, because it's not just distillers, would concentrate their efforts on the cask as a vessel, not a flavoring agent. And if you look at it as a vessel, you look at it as it does a whole bunch of different things. It's additive, it's subtractive, it's like everything about it is doing different things. And everything about its historicity is what should tell you what you can do with that cask too, like how young, how old it is, how long it was seasoned for, if it was seasoned, how many years it's had, etc. G&M is doing it. You know, we're seeing that they're knowing what spirits to pair with wood. Everybody worth their salt in the whiskey industry should be able to do that. And we should be able to see them make whiskeys really, really young, be really, really good just by good cask management. I think. As long as your distillate is good, if you're putting it into good wood, you should be able to make great whiskey.
Tom did ask, and Sam Huri actually responded and probably gave a bit more of an answer than I can. But what's the story with the NAS? So NAS, of course, is sort of a acronym that everybody uses for no age statements. Whiskey Sponge actually took that and tipped it on its head a bit and made it notable age statements for these releases. So Whiskey Sponge and Decadent Drinks which is his company, they're behind the Equinox and Solstice, the Whiskey Sponge release that we tried today, and the NAS were notable age statements, Ben Nevis. And I think it was Whiskey Sponge's sort of like nod to age isn't everything in a lot of cases. And I know I'm definitely guilty of it myself in thinking that older is also always better. But you do come across these casts sometimes where it's just like, holy shit, as Kurt said, like, how can something this young be this complex and this good?
It's big, it's rich, like it's
Yep.
unctuous. To
Yep.
throw a goofy ass word that's never used out. Completely mouth coating. There's something about it that's like almost like a little bit of chest rub going on in like the olfactory sense.
I was thinking of the menthol sort of camphor notes in there.
Almost like you put a couple drops of Buckley's in there somewhere too.
Yeah.
I really dig that whiskey.
Yeah. So it's like the Flaming Moe. Like, that's delicious. And my phlegm feels looser. So Dave Smith says, got to be honest, these young ones aren't blowing me away. They're much more closed up and less flavorful than the older ones in the tasting. I do agree. Like, they're 3 out of the 4 96s are just fantastic whiskeys. And the Whiskey Sponge is a little bit harder to get into, but again, it's one of those whiskeys where whether you like it or not is almost beside the point. It's art in a way where you just have to take it for what it is and see what you get out of it. But Dave Smith also says, spoiler though, I like the SMWS. So let's go on to number 7, which is the Scotch Malt Whisky Society bottle. So this was the first Scotch Malt Whisky Society Ben Nevis to come to Canada. This was distillery number 78. This is a 66 cask from Ben Nevis that the SMWS was bottled. I don't know when their first one came, but SMWS has been around for 40 years now in the UK. I think it's 13 or 14 years in Canada now. And first time we saw it was just this last May or June, if I remember correctly. We've had a second one since. But this was a hell of a dram. I love the name too. This was called Los Bodegas de Fort William. It is one of those names where when we do the blind tasting, if you know where Fort William is and what distilleries around it, it would have given away that this is a Ben Nevis. But cool name nonetheless, and it kind of says what it is when it comes to the whiskey, where it's Ben Nevis, it's been finished in sherry, and it is big and bold.
Oh yeah, this is just knowing it, I was super excited to revisit it in this tasting. I enjoyed it the first time that we had it. It is a beautiful nose.
Yeah. It goes back to the, like we were talking about burlap notes and stuff earlier. It's got a bit of that, it's like coffee beans and burlap that you've got just freshly roasted, and it's got some leathery notes, but it also has a little bit of that mint menthol camphor note, that slightly sort of like soothing medicinal note in there as well.
Yeah, hear that, Kurt? You should be feeling better.
Yeah. It tastes awful and it works.
I get graham cracker and I get marmalade.
Yeah, marmalade's a good call. It does have something a little bit sort of candied and citrus in there.
A little bit of chocolate.
And nose is good, palate's even better.
Palate is so identifiable as Ben Nevis. So identifiable.
It just has that. Ben Nevis is almost like the I'll take one of everything on the menu, please, when it comes to like tasting notes for it, where it's almost all encompassing, where like you've got this chalkiness and minerality in there, you've got the chocolatey notes, you've got the fruit notes that are starting to come through, but it also has that savory side to it, where it's not like full on sulfured or anything, but it's meaty, and almost goes into like a chocolate dip bacon note in there as well. Beef jerky all over the place, teriyaki sauce.
Yeah. It's the balsamic note seems like more focused.
Yep.
Yeah, beef jerky for me, teriyaki definitely, but you still get those like dark fruits and chocolates and that for me, pepper has been something that's carried through on all of these, and there's like this nice black pepper that's coming through.
It's a little bit end of the party boozy too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a drunken swagger to the nose on it, like you're secondhand breathing alcohol off everybody else.
Yeah, how it's crazy what the Nikka's done with this, like how they take this like meaty, like robust and sometimes crazy distillate, and they take it to Japan and they must have run it through some crazy technological filter to create that sort of like clean pinpoint Japanese style that seems to be what everybody looks for from Nikka and Suntory.
Can you read the
What's that?
You should have learned by now that the only filter a whiskey needs is the cask.
That's right.
Same.
That's right. What were you saying, Harmony?
I asked if you can filter a new make after you buy it. Like, can you redistill it through a column still?
I don't see why not. Like,
preventing it?
There's nothing in I mean, they can take Canadian whiskey and Scotch whiskey and bottle it as Japanese whiskey in Japan. So I don't see why they'd have anything against that.
Yeah.
And I think even in Scotland, they've done stuff with redistilling aged whiskey and then aging it again. I could be wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah, Dave, I agree. This seems to be even more well put together than I thought it was during the society tastings.
Yeah. But then I think that just speaks to, I mean, it's not been in a bottle for very long, but just bottle aging too versus casks, and sometimes plays a difference. Having it in your glass, moving it from the bottle it was in, pouring it out, putting it into samples again, then pouring it out. It just, agitating the whiskey, introducing oxygen, makes a big difference.
So let's go back to number one if you guys have any left in your glass, and let's just go through for a quick lightning round again before we do a vote on these, just to see what everybody thinks. So going back to the first one for me, still tropical. It does have a bit more of that paint and paint thinner note, like not full on solventy, but a little bit more solventy in there.
It's cheesier.
Cheesy is a good word. Yeah.
I just find
it's going into right now. Beg your pardon, Kurt?
It's everything I want right now. That smells great to me.
Yeah. It's got a touch of aged Gouda on the nose for me.
To me, it smells like a pineapple gummy bear.
Yeah, that pineapple note just comes out for me on the palate big time.
That palate is awesome. Better than it was the first time around even. Lots of
crazy how it still stands up after the sherry that we just went through too.
Oh, that's so good. I put 2 drops of water in after we tasted each one, so it's been sitting with just 2 drops of water. I was crossing my fingers I wouldn't regret it. So far, first one, still good.
Nice. Number 2, the whiskey sponge. That nose has not changed. I tell you, like it's immutable. It's just, you could leave it there overnight and it's still gonna be like onions, 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 and
I had a flight back. I think I may have told you this from, I think it's from Scotland at one point, maybe it's from England. And I sat next to this English couple sharing a bag of Ruffles, sour cream, and onion potato chips. That is not something you want to sit beside on an airplane. It was not pleasant, and I'm getting a little bit of that on the nose here.
What
I
about a
can't stand
vapor?
couples together too.
Kurt, do you want to sit next to somebody who vapes for 6 hours?
When that happened, I swear to God, if you've seen True Lies, where they'll like stretch and snap, like I kind of wanted to just pop her in the nose with my elbow. Who vapes for like an entire flight? I know she was nervous, but like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rude.
Anyways,
I didn't even know you could vape on planes.
She was wearing a mask and like vaping under it and through
Oh,
it.
fuck.
And I was sitting like 10 rows ahead of him and I could smell it. And every time I look back, Kurt's just like so angry.
Yeah.
And just vibrating by the time he got off, because I actually told the stewardess that someone in that row was vaping. But she thought it was the person by the window, because it would make sense. You're by the window, you're just like hiding your sins. But no, she was just middle row vaping, just upsetting everybody, and they just allowed it the whole flight.
I think
That's where they should just make we're letting this person get off early mid-flight.
mid-flight.
Use your parachute.
Mid-flight stop? Nope, there's no stop.
Yeah.
I think I told you this. Like, I wasn't kidding when I said she was nervous. When you said I was vibrating, it's not because I was angry. She literally had like her leg against mine and was like doing the like shake the whole way.
I don't have a problem. You have a problem.
Yeah, it was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It was John Candy flicking his socks.
Oh man.
Oh, I watched that movie recently and I had such anxiety watching it. To me, it's like, it's all normal human behavior, but today that would not be accepted at all. Like even then, obviously, like Steve Martin's like losing his mind at the gall of this man. But John Candy reminds me of my father, like always inappropriate and loud.
just obnoxious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's social media shaming when you need it, eh?
Totally. Yeah.
I gotta say the whiskey sponge one has kind of grown on me.
It has for me as well. The fruit notes are really showing on the palate. It's come together. The nose is a little off-putting. It still like hits me right behind my eyeball.
Yeah.
But
it's very honeydew melon and cantaloupe driven on the palate for me right now.
Yeah. There's a little marshmallow.
Okay, back to the cut down 7-year-old, the Equinox and Solstice, 48.5% alcohol 7-year-old Ben Nevis.
Oh, it's beefy. Ugh.
Yeah, this is like it does have a bit of that beefy note, but it's like pulling your leather jacket out of the closet after you haven't worn it for a while too. Like that, just a leather bomber jacket.
And somebody may have been smoking it before, it kind of sounds like.
Yeah.
To me, it's like pulling out your winter leather gloves, but maybe they didn't completely dry out before you shoved them in the box.
Just musty leather,
Yeah.
Where you put them on and the leather kind of cracks. When
It's time to get rid of those gloves.
Yeah. There's like in the leather jacket you left one of those sunripe like grapefruit bars or red or the dried fruit bars in there. It's like, oh, it's still good.
Right.
Talking about these 7-year-olds and knocking these 7-year-olds down and stuff. Saw this the other day, it made me laugh. That meme with that old guy sitting at the table drinking coffee. It says 2 dudes were beating up a little kid in an alley, so I stepped in to help. Kid didn't stand a chance against the 3 of us.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's so good.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting what Dave says about these being tight.
Yeah.
They're really robust on the nose, but you would expect that from something that's in sherry casks. But I'm missing like that creamy tropical fruit
Yeah.
that comes through on the other ones. Like now that I've had that, I would love to see it more. And I mean, bourbon to sherry, you're gonna not have, not everything will be the same, but it's there's definitely a longer finish and a complexity to the older ones that you don't have. It is a face full of flavor up front, but the finishes are much shorter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like a weird version of the bull in the china shop where it's like the bull gets in there and then is afraid to break anything, like taking like tiptoe steps and just like quietly moving around instead of just beating the shit out of the place.
A dainty bull.
That's right.
Yeah, still interesting. Okay, so what's the next one? I put my little samples away.
Back to the Boutique 10th anniversary Ben Nevis 25-year-old.
There's a little bit of sulfuriness I'm really struggling with on those.
Yeah. It's that again
Yeah.
takes me back to the whiskey sponge one. Like it's got those big onion notes, like the bag of Funyuns that you just opened.
And this one to me it's almost like you spilled a little bit of white wine in an ashtray or something. I get a little bit of like flour, like white flour and dirt or soil or something there too.
Yeah, I can see where you're going, like where it's a little bit dunnage driven.
Yeah. But
And it's that chalkiness in there as well.
Just a dirty cask, I think. The palate's sort of redeeming, but it lingers with a little bit of sulfur for me too.
Couple people asking which ones are remaining. I'll actually send you the link for all the 3 remaining bottles that are available here all together in a second.
Yeah. Whiskey base. Oh, lots of honey on the whiskey base now.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's pretty.
There's a link for the trio there. So it's the Equinox, the Boutique that we just tried, and then the whiskey sponge.
I get honey and a little bit of licorice and a little bit of like faint dandelion note on the nose now.
Oh,
I can see where you're going with the linus. With the licorice. It's yeah, very like a leathery licorice in there.
What a palate. A little bit of oil on the palate, a little bit of like sunflower seed, maybe linseed oil or something.
yeah. I get a little like coriander seed as well.
Good call.
That's a cracker of whiskey.
Yeah, this is more of the it's like the darkened brooding version of the Maltbarn, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like the hot older sister that you. Come on, we've all been there. Well, maybe not all of us, but
I have.
yeah. Okay, so probably all of us have been there.
Yeah.
Somebody with the hot older sister, you know. All right, NAS number 2. Tom, comment of the night. Well played, buddy. Well played, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, now what? He just won the internet tonight.
That's right. That should be on a t-shirt. This is the NAS 7-year-old is the most like closed on the nose of the entire lineup for me.
But do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where it's in the kitchen and like the little like, I think he's like a Japanese mafia guy, just stands there and you don't see anything while all the other shit is going on around him. And then someone you can't see him, it's like this tightly round little thing is like kind of ass kicker when you get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, remember
the samurai in the room.
Mm-hmm.
There
has
is like
this,
a
sorry, go ahead.
sweet, I was gonna say there's like a sweet fruit sorbet thing happening on the nose where it's like a subtle frozen fruit. It's not quite in your face, but it's there. There's like a hint of sweetness. I cannot put my finger on what it is on the nose here, but it's good.
Yeah, and palate wise, it's got this like chili oil note on the palate where it's got this heat that's left on the tongue that is really neat right now. Yeah, that chili oil thing's crazy.
Oh yeah, it's quite spicy.
Yeah.
Cool. Because the nose to me has this like really pretty soft, like fruity sweetness, even just like almost like a hint of a vanilla cream,
Mhm.
almost. Maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
Espresso
almond.
beans in there as well for me on
Yeah.
on the NAS. Okay, and last but not least, back to Las Bodegas to Fort William.
Samples mixed up.
Bloody awesome tenure.
Yeah. That's going into that Ovaltine note again that I mentioned on another one there on the nose right now. So chocolatey.
Lovely.
Kind of like if you've rated your kids' Halloween bags after Halloween, you'll notice how there's definitely different chocolate used or different factories used for making the chocolate bars for Halloween, where they go white and
Very quickly.
very quickly, and it has that sort of stale chocolate note, but in a good way, where it's like, oh, this is kind of old, but it still tastes really good.
That's because it's only last year's chocolate, but not
That's right.
3-year-old chocolate.
That's right.
I get it like a bit
Man,
of. Sorry, go ahead, Evan.
no, go ahead, man.
I get a little bit of ginger ale meets like 7 Up or Sprite, and then a bit of bourbon on the top of it.
It's going cinnamon and cherries for me in a bourbon-esque way right now.
Mm.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, that pretty fun lineup, and I'm actually pretty happy with the order that we had it in too.
Yeah, it was a nice breakup, and I'm glad that you did it that way. Is there a poll? I know we have a small group. I don't know if we did a poll, if it will just take comments.
Yeah, I do have a poll here, but people are more than welcome to comment as well. I'll see if I can figure out where these poll things are now. There we go. Here we go for if you want to vote on your two favorites. Well, everybody's doing that. Harmony, what are your two favorites of the night?
1 and 5.
1 and 5, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. Kurt?
5 and 1.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, and then probably honorable to the society.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I think I would go 1 and 5. I think 1 is just that's the bottle where you open it and you don't even need to put the cork back on, like it's going to disappear. The whiskey-based one, yeah, the whiskey-based one is just a little bit richer, and you might need a little bit longer of a time to sit with it. But yeah, for a 10-year-old, that SMWS bottle is cracking. Sammy, since you're here with you, what do you think of the lineup, and what were your favorites?
I actually like the whiskey sponge one too.
Nice.
That's my first one, and the second one is the Maltbarn, the number 1.
Cool.
Yeah, we have a lot of Maltbarn. We just received some Maltbarn whiskeys, and we haven't done anything with them yet, but they have a really cool selection that's recently hit the shelves. at Kensington Wine Market, and I hope that we have a chance to dive into more of them.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to
next year.
do a malt barn tasting, pardon me, like we have or are doing with the whiskey agency and archives.
Yeah, I'm disappointed the archives was postponed, but if
Yeah.
you, I'm happy that it is, because I'm hoping more people can sign up for it. I know we have a few kits left. It's unfortunate our scheduling didn't work out the
Yeah.
way we had hoped, but I really hope if you haven't bought an archives kit that you will consider, because I think it will really be surprising.
Mhm.
I think
So
too,
the
remember back in the day, Evan,
yeah,
when we were pouring tastings and stuff before we went virtual, we would do a tasting for 20 some people in the store, and there'd be a lot of heels in the back that, would
Mhm.
go home with staff people later on covered in dust and everything. It was quite a fight for all those archives ones and stuff like that at that
oh
point.
yeah,
These are bottles that archives, Maltbarn, Whiskybase, things like that, that basically Igor's stable of whiskeys that
Mhm.
have been coming in for quite some time now. But a lot of times, unless you're really geeky or unless you're really chasing your stuff, unless your pocketbooks are really deep, I think a lot of people avoided them because the prices were high. Now you put on tastings like this and be able to try them like all over the place. I'm surprised more and more people aren't jumping onto these brands and realizing that there's more value in these brands than in almost any others.
Yeah.
The prices have held
No.
fairly steady.
Yeah, I would agree. I can understand hesitancy in new brands, because I mean, ultimately anyone can buy a cask and put a label on it. But I think we've shown our customers that we stand behind the brands we stand behind because of what they're selecting and the uniqueness within that market. The archives and whiskey agency, Gordon and MacPhail, I mean, they're all fantastic in their own right, and they all offer something different. And I think if you were going to gamble on a whiskey, doing it in a tasting like this is the perfect way. It's, $50, $100 up front, but I would rather put that money down and say, oh man, I'm glad I didn't buy those 2 bottles because they are not my cup of tea, but I would have never guessed that tasted like that.
Yep.
And so you put your almost like a deposit down on the adventure of whiskey instead of investing it all into that one bottle that you don't like.
Yep. No, that's the fun. It is with independent bottlers in general. It's always a little bit of a roll of the dice of what you're going to get. Luckily, with just about every independent bottler out there, even for the bigger companies, they were founded by people who loved whiskey. And then for the smaller, newer ones like Whiskey Agency and archives, they're like those are whiskey geeks in charge and selecting casks. Whiskey Sponge, of course, same way. So you are pretty much guaranteed that even if it's not like your personal favorite whiskey that you've ever had, the quality is going to be there because it's guys that typically have enough money to or are confident that they can earn enough to do what they love. And not everybody's in that position where they can also share what they love with the world too.
Yeah, agreed. We have the best job.
I know it's pretty good. And when it comes to Kensington Wine Market too, like we only carry about 1,200 whiskeys, and we carry the best 1,200 whiskeys. It's very curated what we have on the shelves.
That's a heavy load to carry.
It is. Who else would taste those 1,200 whiskeys for you guys?
I think there's a few people that would be happy to step in.
Yeah,
Those
well,
are-
and it sounds like our customers want to try them because both of our whiskey festivals are sold out. So that's great.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Dave says after Scotch Guy's 20th anniversary tasting, I'll have done 26 KWM tastings this year. Dave, you can have you gotten the whiskey calendar because or pre-ordered, because you could add to that because we are doing 5 tastings for the whiskey calendar alone. But I think that means you may have done more virtual tastings than me, which is or potentially even Kurt, which is impressive.
I
Going
made
for
a
an oven.
spreadsheet. Started
that, Kurt?
making a spreadsheet of tastings that I
Oh, yeah.
attended, and it's outrageous. And it's like, yeah, it's no wonder I can't keep track of all the things I've tried, because
That's right.
this is what I've tried just in tastings. This isn't what I've tried during the day or from agents or the
Yep.
15 years of industry or at the friends' houses or the blind pours that Kurt gives me that I still don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah. No, I talked about it in the past in tastings and with Kurt and Hunter and Sean and stuff. I don't think I've talked about it with you, Harmony, but I always described what we do as kind of we're breathing rare air is what we're doing, where we are lucky enough to have the opportunity to taste stuff that pretty much the entire whiskey loving population doesn't get to taste the combination of stuff that we get to on a regular basis. The cool thing about virtual tastings is it definitely has made it so that we can offer up a lot of the stuff we do taste on a regular basis more often, instead of just waiting to do an in-store tasting with them, which these virtuals are a lot easier to kind of spread the scope of what we do pour, as we did with this Ben Nevis tasting here.
It's a great thing that we
Mhm.
had. It's I know we did a lot of tastings before, and like even just in Canada, the community is so tight, and there's always something you can always find some tasting to join or go to a shop and do a tasting. But if there's any blessings that have come out of COVID, besides not being sneezed or coughed on in public, it's the whiskey tastings.
That's right.
I do want to just plug something that has absolutely nothing to do with the store, but good people and talented people too. It looks like Joanne McInnes and Terry Lamb have launched some kind of new magazine sort of thing. I don't know who else is involved with it, but Jo has been around absolutely bathing herself in whiskey for a very, very long time, probably not far off of where I came into the game too. I'm not sure exactly when she started, but I remember her from way, way, way back in the day too. And Terry's been working kind of peripherally in the industry and then actually within the industry, spending a lot of time traveling and stuff. She's awesome too, really, really sweet. So check out what they're doing. It's gonna be fun. They've got some strong opinions and some great experience and stuff too.
Yeah, so that magazine was sort of set up by Mike Friesbois, and he got Joanne to come on as the editor, and I'm actually one of the writers for it.
Cool.
I've got an article in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that a perfect little
yeah,
we did.
Come on, do your curtsy, Evan.
yeah. You couldn't see it, but I did lift my skirt there under the table. Tom, thank you. It was a fun article to write. I'm looking forward to hopefully writing some more. I think the plan is to do that quarterly. But it was the first issue of the Whiskey Explorer magazine was just released for free online. You can find it on social media. And it's cool. I can't believe that I am a writer in a magazine that also features like Davin Nakurgamo and Lou Bryson from the United States, who is a big Scotch and bourbon writer down there, and has written books as well. Terry Lamb and Joanne McInnes being part of it, and Mike Friesbois. So I'm incredibly happy that they did not look at anything I've written in the past and completely ignored that and allowed me to write something for them as well. So hopefully they do not read this one and I get to do more as well.
You're modest, Evan. You're a great writer. You're very entertaining.
Thank you. I don't go for information. I go for entertainment whenever possible. So.
I will do one plug for a tasting that's coming up, and it's in store on Saturday. We have another independent bottler, Cadenhead, that's we have Jenna McIntosh in town, who helped create the line of the Cadenhead Origin. Is it Origins? Original. Yeah. Origins. Sorry. So she's in town and she'll be doing an in-store tasting. If any of you are interested, please email me. It's $25. You're welcome to email me or sign up online. If you have guests or friends, let me know. We can squeeze people in. It's catered by Next Door as well, so we'll get to try some really great whiskeys, including their 25-year blended. So should be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a really fun lineup. I'm sorry that I'll be out of town for that because Sean has met her before when he and Andrew were over in Scotland last year, and apparently she's pretty cool to talk to, and it's going to be interesting to see what these releases are like.
And this photo is not doing her justice.
Yeah.
Just also to say this is very not a very flattering photo of her. She's
Yeah, that's right.
It'll be a good tasting. I wish I could be there as well. But yeah, if you've got no plans on Saturday afternoon and you and your friends want to come and have a drink, just let us know.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you, Kurt and Harmony and Sammy and everybody else for joining in on this tasting. It was a ton of fun lineup and really cool to see the dichotomy of 96s versus the young guns, but really fun lineup to run through. Hopefully we can get another lineup of 7 Ben Nevis in here and delve further into the distillery in the future. Cheers, guys. Take care.
Have a good night, everyone. Till next time.